Saru Shime. This is a technique from standing, although I'm going to show a variation of this from kneeling. It's a pretty dangerous technique. It's a high level technique. I would not recommend this for people who haven't been practicing for a long time, very competent with rolls, have already worked through the Oku and Shinin. And if you've never practiced this technique, I would recommend thinking very carefully about which versions you decide to use. But if you're used to practicing this technique and don't have the opportunity to do that right now without a partner, this is a great way to do that. Or if you have worked your way up to that level of technique and have never had a chance and want to give it a try, do this very carefully, and I'll give you modified versions as well, which is the modified version is actually the common version we do in class just because it's such a complicated and dangerous technique. We do this technique from facing each other. Someone throws a straight punch. My entrance is I'm stepping in on that punch, parry, parry, and then my inside hand is grabbing the arm, pulling towards me as I step up on the hip. What I've created here is I just wrap a gi around a mobility tool to create the neck, and I put a broom in on one side. And I've stuffed it in pretty deep all the way to the other side. I don't want this arm too long because when I roll over it, I don't want it sticking out so far. It's going to make this roll complicated. With a person, the arm's going to bend some. Obviously with the broom it's not, so that's why I'm making sure to push it in all the way through to the other side. And I'm going to just put it up on a chair to create the height. It's still going to be a little bit lower than you would be normally with somebody standing, but just to give you a sense of rolling from a higher ball. And then I just put something soft on the floor. This is just a futon. You can get a futon or a small mattress just to put on the floor. First, I'm going to recommend just practicing rolling. If you haven't been rolling for a while, make sure that you can roll and that you feel safe rolling on this, whatever it is that you put on the floor. Now what I'm doing, the person's punching, like I said, parry, parry, grabbing that sleeve, pulling them towards me, and stepping up on the hip. That's what I'm going to do with the chair. I'll show you from the side. I'm going to go into the roll. Parry, parry, I'm grabbing that sleeve, step on the chair, like it would be the hip, and I'm going to stand all the way up. And in one motion, stand up, my other leg's going to go over the head, back around, and hook around the lats on the side, hooking the side of the body. My toes actually go all the way around behind to the kidney, so I got a nice lock on the arm, and I'm in nice and tight on the body. Go up, pull in, step all the way over, and wrap. This is hard even on a chair. With a person, it's even more complicated. You need to have a good partner who's used to doing this and get a nice firm base to work your way into this until you can work up into a smooth, safe roll. Foot up, all the way up and over, and hook. From here, I'm going to grab the back of the collar, pull them in, make sure they're nice and tight, and I'm going to have the arm locked between my legs so I can put my arm out for my roll. I drop into my roll, and they go all the way over. And you can see how I've landed. I'm about to set up Tobi Tenada. I've already got half of this armbar on. Once I hit the ground, this other leg goes up and over and hooks behind the neck. Open those knees up and bridge. Finishing with Tobi Tenada. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that. There's a separate video on that as well. You want to practice this from kneeling. Generally the way we do the same thing, parry, parry. And instead of just pulling and stepping, I'm going to parry, parry, pull, and then I'm going to put my forearm against the elbow. Instead of grabbing the elbow, my hand's going to slide down the forearm to the wrist. My forearm's going to come behind the elbow, and I'm going to drop the person down to their knees. So if I'm punching, I punch, armbar, grabbing me, and dropping me down to my knees. That way you're much closer to the ground. I don't actually step on the person at all. I just keep my foot on the ground, still stepping over, hooking, grabbing the back of the collar, and just from here you can see my foot's actually on the ground now, just rolling into that technique. Finishing with throwing the other leg over and behind the head, Tobi Tenada. One of the more dangerous parts of this technique, which isn't part of the technique, but you have to be very careful right here. This part where I'm stepping up and over, being careful not to knee your partner on the back of the head. It's a common problem. If you're okay for this, make sure to tuck your head a little bit. When you're doing it, I actually like to put my hand on the head, and then that way I know where the head is without looking at it. And then I can step over my hand, lift my hand out of the way, and then hook. There's a lot going on here, a lot of coordination and balance. Step up, I don't want to knee them in the back of the head on the way over. In application, that might be a nice technique. The only problem is if I really knee them hard and they start to fall before I get my leg through, I won't get the technique. Not a bad technique, but it would just be a different type of technique. I come up, knee them in the back of the head and land on them. But that's not any of our techniques. So be very careful not to knee in the back of the head as you're stepping over and hooking. Good luck practicing. Saru, Shime at home.